chat. So I'm Natasha and I'm a relationship manager at WordPress VIP, and I focus on supporting some of our media customers. I'm going to be guiding today's discussion, and we're going to dive into the challenges that publishing teams are wrestling with and exploring opportunities that you may want to consider as we head into 2025. So I'm really excited to introduce our amazing speakers. First, we have Lisa. Lisa's the head of project management at Big Byte. Big Byte are a longtime WordPress VIP partner agency, and Lisa has been instrumental in developing custom tools and workflows for top publishers like The Times, helping them to streamline operations and improve efficiency. And joining us from The Times and the Sunday Times, we have Tim. Tim's the assistant head of digital, and Tim brings invaluable first-hand experience in overcoming the challenges of large-scale publishing. And Tim's going to share how his team successfully transformed workflows to thrive in the digital age. So for today's session, we're going to be exploring insights from the Newsrooms 2.0 guide. I hope you have all had a chance to read it. If you haven't, there's going to be a QR code at the end so you can download that and have a read. We shared it last month, and it was a collaboration between WordPress VIP and Big Byte, and we outlined some strategies to tackle newsroom challenges and redefine digital publishing for the year ahead. So here's a quick look at today's agenda. We're going to start by discussing the challenges that newsrooms face today, and then we'll move into new approaches and solutions to explore, followed by some real-world examples of how the changes can help. And finally, we'll wrap up with some practical steps that you can take in 2025. So again, as we go through, feel free to leave your thoughts or questions in the chat. I'm going to keep an eye on them. And at the end of the session, we'll have a Q&A and address as many as we can. So let's dive in. We're going to start by looking at the key challenges that newsrooms are facing today, from managing multiple disconnected systems to streamlining workflows across teams. These obstacles can make it difficult to stay competitive in a fast-paced digital world. So to dive deeper into this, I'm going to hand it over to Lisa, who will walk us through the broader technical challenges that she's observed while working with some of the leading publishers.
Hi, everyone. I think one of the largest challenges that we see in a lot of newsrooms that we've worked with in the past, especially for the Times as well, is just the use of multiple external third-party systems to kind of, I guess, accommodate different workflows. So, for example, on the Times, they had several different systems in use as well. Some of the main ones that we found quite challenging was the picture workflow. So they were using Photoshop for things like cropping images and just general management of images as well before moving them back into the CMS. So as you can imagine, the person who's writing the article would kind of had to wait for the picture side to be done before they can progress. Another example of these as well is the legal workflow. So they were relying on things like emails and Google Docs to prioritize articles that needed legal review. So as you can imagine, that's like not only time consuming, it just leaves a lot of room for inefficiencies and error as well. Tim can probably talk a little bit more about how those affected the daily operations of the newsroom at the Times prior to moving to WordPress.
Yeah, hello everyone. So I think firstly, before we get into that, you can actually think about the media industry as a whole, because the media industry has a lot of big, weighty challenges. Firstly, it used to be that you would just print a newspaper and your broadsheet rivals for the Times, for example, were your rivals, and that was it. It was, you had the Telegraph, the Guardian, the Independent. You had a few people to worry about. Now everyone's your rival. Every app is your rival. Netflix is your rival. Amazon Prime is your rival. The New York Times, by the way, is your rival, despite them being an American brand with a very similar name. They are also your rival because it's global. Anyone can download an app from anywhere. So how does that fit into CMSs? Well, that means that there's pressure to get things right, to make your articles look great, to make all of your content look great, to serve it up quickly as well. A breaking news story, used to be that something big happened and you had several hours in the day to get it into a beautifully crafted double page spread. Whereas now, 5 seconds, you got to get that up online. So these kind of mean that really, if you're going to be able to compete in that sort of environment, you're going to have to get your CMS right, and you're going to have to get your processes right. And as Lisa alluded to, if that process involves multiple systems, people doing things in one place and then shifting it to another place and then shifting it to another place, it's obviously going to take time and slow you down. If it involves emails back and forth, waiting for this person to see this email, waiting for that person to respond to that email, then again, it's going to slow you down. So the more you can bring your all of these workflows into a central place and have them sort of guided by CMS that really is fit for purpose for the digital age, then the better you're going to be in that place to compete with the Netflixes for people's brain space, people's time, people's doom scrolling. So that's where we are, I think, with those particular solutions that Lisa get. And I'll hand it back to you for any other solutions and problems that we have.
Yeah, I think another one is the lack of flexibility and the ability to scale existing systems as well. So like Tim said, if you're going to compete in this industry now, you not only need to get your content out fast, but you need to be able to update your systems fast as well, or your CMS. So like that goes for things like if you're changing workflows or introducing new workflows, like you need to be able to scale that CMS to accommodate that. So I think like a big challenge that the Times did see with the previous CMS method, it just took like a very long time to get things through the development cycle, to introduce new workflows, or like I say, even just enhance existing ones. So if you think about like them being a print first publication, moving to a digital first one, it was a massive shift, and it just wasn't feasible in that CMS. But again, Tim can probably add a bit of insight to how hard that was previous to WordPress.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, the problem you have there really is that it feels really esoteric, and it feels why does that matter, development cycles? But it does, because you design something. It can be whatever. It can be a timeline. In your article, a timeline of here's all the previous parts of this story. I'm trying not to date this by accidentally talking about a story that's currently going on. I won't do that. But it can be some timeline, and you'll design this component. And by the time it gets out there in front of your readers, it looks like something that was designed in 2012. And that could be because it actually was designed in 2012. So you kind of need to make sure that these cycles can be much shorter. And another big challenge really with all of this is that you can't do what other companies might do. So other companies might just pause their activities and say, we need to reinvest in our tech stack and all this sort of stuff. And you'll just pause and just wait for a bit and get all of that bit right. But we're 24/7. So whether it's 2 a.m., a shift that I used to do, unfortunately, or whether it's 7 a.m., another shift that for me as a late riser, I unfortunately did have to do, you have to keep publishing. You can't just send a message to your readers and say, keep paying us for a year, but we're not going to bother publishing for a bit because we need to sort our tech stack. They're not going to understand that, and neither should they. They shouldn't understand that, and they shouldn't have to. So that's a big challenge in this, that you're rebuilding this airplane, to steal an analogy from a colleague, but you're doing it while you're flying the airplane. So it's really challenging and difficult to do that. But it all is for the purpose of shorter and truncated time for developing, because then you can move fast and you can move with the times. And when something new happens, you can jump to being ahead, rather than kind of constantly playing that catch up. And that's I think a big powerful part of this, is getting that bedrock right. And I think it's something which is maybe quite unique to the media industry, because not as many other companies can just say we're not pausing things. And I think Lisa can talk a bit more about some of the specific solutions that we kind of we had to implement for that.
Yeah, definitely. I think just another one, and this is the cross collaboration need as well. So back to talking about the picture teams and the legal teams, and even just the journalists writing the article. There's a big need for cross collaboration there, and people using the same article or whatever it is, same page at the same time. Unfortunately, that's just not possible at the moment in WordPress core. But that was kind of a big challenge that we faced for the Times, because not only were the external systems kind of slow and clunky, but like we said, the previous CMS just wasn't scalable at all. The additional need there is to, once you've figured out the workflows, is tying them together, so it allows people to work on things at the same time and not add that additional bottleneck into waiting for somebody else to finish their job before you can do yours. I think we will touch on that a little bit later on, but Tim, was there anything more that you wanted to add on the cross collaboration front?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we publish a couple of hundred articles a day, and if you can imagine, each one of those needs pictures, and some of them might need videos, they might need graphics, need other parts like that. And the problem there is that they work at different paces. So you could be doing picture research, or you could be sending a photographer out to get a picture. However, the words could already be written and could be ready for you to edit them. So the problem is that how do you square that circle? How do you solve that problem? How do you make it so that someone can be working on the pictures and getting the pictures all ready while someone else is working on the article? And obviously, we all know Google Docs is kind of as a way of, everyone can collaborate there, but that has its problems as well, actually, if I'm honest. But really what it is that you need to have a way that multiple teams can be working at the same time and collaborating. And in our former CMS, we had a solution where you kind of had a holding pen for images, and that worked quite nicely. And it was something that helped us with our workflow. It meant that multiple streams could be doing multiple things, and really no one had much appetite to get rid of that. And so, it was one of the situations where with the help of others, it was implemented as a solution for us, for our CMS, for our WordPress instance. And really that is useful for two reasons. Number one, it's the right thing to do collaboration wise, but number two, it's familiarity. So it means that if you're coming from the old system, you're seeing something which is quite familiar to you. It's, you're able to say, imagine like that part on the old CMS. And that means that people feel not like you're giving something totally new. They're like, I don't know what to do with this. They see something which is familiar to them and has familiar themes and ideas. And it's, oh, I put the picture in here. That's a bit like when I used to put the picture in there. And that also helps with that change management side, which is a really important part of all of this, because ultimately you're going to have to get a large number of people changing their daily habits and changing things that they're spending the majority of their day doing. So you want to make sure that you get that right, and that in some way they're happy and have a stake in it and feel invested in it. And that's a very specific solution there. And I'm sure there's more that Lisa can talk about as well.
Thanks, Lisa and Tim. I'm sure there's a lot of other media organizations on the webinar today that are experiencing their own challenges or might have any questions for Tim and Lisa. So feel free to start dropping questions in the chat and we can cover those off at the end. We talked about challenges, so now we're going to move forward and start to explore some solutions. So Lisa, you worked closely with the Times to develop some custom tools and workflows that directly tackled some of the inefficiencies they were facing. Can you talk a little bit about how Big Byte approached building the solutions and what made them so effective for the Times?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just talking about the cross collaboration there, it's good to chat about the image workflow. I think that was a huge piece. I'm sure Tim will agree, was heavily involved in that. But at the Times, like I said previously, they relied on those multiple external systems. So the focus was to kind of try and consolidate them in the right way, really, but also, like Tim said, bearing in mind like what everybody was used to, and not trying, like, you have to change the mindset to an extent, but you also need to kind of bring some of the existing workflows over so that you have that familiarity. So we built a couple of features actually called, we called them current and article media. So it kind of just allows you, so you have like your WordPress media library, but it allows the people from the picture team to pull in images from the media library into like a specific article, and kind of like that holding area that Tim mentioned kind of acts the same ways that whoever's editing the article or writing the content can see a real-time update of those images being dropped in. So they might be writing an article about, let's say, like the election or something, and somebody's dropping in images to that area within the article. And that's all happening in real time, so you're not having to like refresh the screen or anything to see the updates coming through. So that just significantly like really reduces the time to get the article to that ready to publish stage, just removing that bottleneck as well. But there was another feature that we built called Picture Populator, so that kind of ties into that media flow, but it allows you to create multiple crops of an image that are used across different places on the website. So it could be like a thumbnail on the homepage, or like a lead image, for example. So I think that was being done again in an external system prior to WordPress, but that just allows them to do that all in one place now. And like I say, with with people doing their own jobs in different places, it's not slowing down any other processes, as well as kind of reducing the reliance on those external systems. Tim, was there anything that you wanted to add on those features? I know you've kind of talked about cross collaboration quite a bit there.
Yeah, I think the main thing really is that the picture populator and this image sidebar, essentially, it's a great way of allowing pretty much two people to work on an article at the same time. And without those, it just would be very inefficient. Say the picture person has to go in, put the pictures in, then someone else has to go and edit it. And also it would really kind of give you, it would leave you slightly open to mistakes happening. So I think the fact that you can have two people collaborating was pretty much key. And since every article has to have a picture in, really, it's pretty fundamental. And the picture populator as well, that, without that, we wouldn't be able to have different size images, different crops of images, even different images. So, it means that we can have one image on the homepage, another on the article, for example, stuff like that, which you need that for. And the fact that it's all just there in the tool as a pop-up, it makes it a lot easier and more seamless. And once you've got that bedrock, you can start imagining what more you could build on that current media sidebar as well. So it really was something which, it doesn't sound very sort of big and interesting, but without that, we probably couldn't have even rolled out WordPress at all. To be honest, on the times, it would have been very difficult.
Yeah, definitely. I think another big one as well, again, it's that kind of doesn't seem that big when you're talking about it, but the revisions feature. So, I mean, people might already be familiar with the WordPress core version of revisions, but we'd previously built a kind of extended version of that for News Corp, and it's already been live for many years now in publications like Wall Street Journal and New York Post. So the Times kind of benefited from that already being built, but it's a major enhancement to that WordPress core feature. So you're already able to see, you're already able to kind of view the existing version of the article versus a previous version. But what our version did, on top of that, is allow you to view dynamic elements as well. So say if you have custom Gutenberg blocks, they'll pull through to that revisions window, and you can see a really visible view of what's changed. So for example, if you had an image, you'll be able to see the meta that's changed in there as well. So if you've changed things like captions or image credit, or even just changed the image itself, it'll highlight it in yellow, so you can visibly see that that's been changed in some way. Versus if you change things like text or just other kind of text-based elements in the article, it'll highlight things that have been stripped in red and highlight things that have been added in green. So it's just like I said, a major enhancement to what people are used to with the revisions core feature. Tim, you can probably let us know how that kind of benefits you guys, because I think it's used quite a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of those ones which it's used daily, really, and it's used in a few different ways. I mean, firstly, it's really very important as a log of every state that article has been published in, but also the fact that it's every state that article was drafted in is very useful, because the fact that it gives you the person that did every action. So it means that it's kind of useful as a training tool. So for example, say you've got a trainee editor, you can kind of bring them, give them an article to edit, and then once they've edited it, you can go back and you can see what they've done in each steps. But also with published articles, you can see, okay, when did this picture change? Who put it in? And then you can, in a nice way, not in a sinister way, message them and just say, hey, I noticed that you put this picture in, landscape. Just this happens if you do that, or whatever it might be. But it means that you have that record, and otherwise you're kind of in the dark and you're not sure why things happen. So it's very useful, and the side-by-side feature with the different colors is very useful, and the fact that you can see more than just text, you can see all our custom blocks and pictures is again important. And it's not just important for lawyers or a legal department, but it's important for training, because it means you can see how the article is being built up over time. So it's a daily feature that we use every day. And by the way, it's open to all users as well. So it's not just an admin only job. It's that every single person is able to go and have a look. So, it's there for everyone to see. and it's very helpful. The other really great aspect of it is that you can open the revisions while not locking the article, which again is extremely helpful, because it means you could potentially be looking at what's going on with a certain version while someone else is actually working actively on the live story. Plus, being able to go back to a revision and being able to reinstate that version is, of course, always handy.
Yeah, absolutely.
It sounds like the solutions have definitely improved and impacted the day-to-day workflows of the team, Tim. So we've talked about the challenges and explored some powerful solutions, and we want to start to dig into how the approaches have made a real impact. So Tim, I know you've prepared a video that highlights the transformation at the Times. Can you set the stage a little bit for what we're about to see and share how the changes have shaped the team's success?
Sure thing. So here's a video that's going to show kind of old versus new in terms of our CMSs, and what's gonna be is an article. There's the same article being built side by side, and you'll see a click counter counting how many times someone's clicking the button. You'll also see how many times you have to dip in and out to kind of go to an external Google spreadsheet in this case, and so I think it's quite informative in that way.
Great, let's take a look at the video.
So yeah, people don't mind me kind of just talking over this, because I think it should be a bit self-explanatory, but you see in the left our old CMS, or in the right as you're seeing, I think, and Newspress, which is our WordPress instance. So you'll see the time ticking up, and this has been done by someone who is an expert in our previous CMS, and obviously this was early on in the rollout, so they weren't as expert. They hadn't used it for anywhere near the same amount of time, the new CMS. And I think that really helps to show that even with a minimal amount of sort of knowledge, you kind of can get yourself to building that article much quicker. So that's now a publishable state on the new CMS, and we're still going on the old one. It will keep going, and you can see it's 60 clicks. So the point really of this is to show how many times you have to jump in and out, and also how what you see is what you get. WYSIWYG, the new CMS version is, and how that, as you can imagine, really helps redefine your ability to do mobile storytelling and any kind of visual storytelling, because you can't do visual storytelling if you can't see what's going on.
Thanks, Tim. That video really captures the impact of the changes. What about time savings? What do those time savings mean for the team, and how does it help the newsroom overall?
It's a good question. So I think the key thing about these time savings is that what it really does is it allows you to focus more on raising the bar for every article. So you're not just rushing to get those hundreds of articles out, you're able to actually focus on them. And because if you're spending a large amount of time doing just the manual clicking and processing just to get the article ready, then you don't have that time spent to actually focus on what's important. What's the best top image for this article? What's the best graphic for this? And that's really the key thing here, is it is shifting that time for you to focus on how you present that digital article, specifically for a mobile phone for us. And really, it's kind of trying to get that standard that people are used to. A print page, 10 people standing around lovingly curating that double page spread, taking that and allowing us to do that on a mobile app. And on a print, there's obviously one type of CMS you need, but on a mobile app or on a website, there's a different type of CMS. And I think that's where this time saving can really help. It can help you do that. And within that, you can grow your audience, you have better articles, you can optimize them for SEO better. You can make sure that, they're hitting all the Google metrics. You can also really make sure that your readers are engaged with them, because it depends if you're a subscription or not a subscription business, but ultimately you need your readers to like your articles, because if people don't like the articles that they're reading, at some point they're going to wonder why they're even reading them in the first place. So I think that's where the time savings has really helped us. It's allowed us to invest that time in the quality. I think that explains it. Hopefully I'll hand back to you, Natasha.
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you, Tim. And Lisa, you have the benefit of a wider lens. Being an agency that works with multiple publishers, you've seen similar transformations. So we'd love to hear a little bit from you about how streamlining workflows and tools have driven efficiency for some of the other publishers that you work with.
Yeah. Well, with the Times specific on the time saving side of things, there's been like a 34% reduction on getting that article through to publish. You can see in the video there, it's about 4 minutes difference, and the amount of clicks is crazy. But on the New York Post, we do similar plugins for the different newsrooms on News Corp, but we built an image collage plugin for New York Post, and they again were using, I think they were using Photoshop before we built this feature to basically do exactly what it says on the tin, like make a collage out of a couple of images. You'll see them all over the New York Post homepage. They do them for like loads of different stories, but they can now do that within WordPress. And they said it takes them about 5 minutes now to build a collage, and they just pull stuff in from the WordPress media library. So like they might even add new images to the media library and then just kind of create the collage out of that, or just use existing ones. But overall, that time saving is huge. It used to take them a fair few hours to build those externally and then put them into WordPress, and then obviously assign them to an article, whereas now they can just do it inside that article straight away. I think going back to the Times as well, like Tim, you can probably talk about the training time and the onboarding for WordPress compared to Method. I think it's quite a difference, isn't it?
Yeah, so the thing is, we don't have a WordPress trainer. I am the WordPress trainer. And so the way that people can be trained is that you can give them 30 minutes just tutorial in how to use WordPress, and then essentially they can go away, click around a lot, and kind of figure out loads of stuff for themselves, because it is intuitive and there's not too many buttons and menus that you can go wrong with. And we've kind of tried to optimize it so the buttons and menus you're seeing are the only ones you kind of really need mostly. And again, you can even optimize the training for who you're doing it for. So if it's someone who just needs to get some words in, you can show them really simply that. And if it's someone who needs to know all the nuts and bolts and every spit and cough and all the little bits and pieces, then again, you can do that. And you can do that in pretty much 30 minutes for the WordPress side of the training. And that means that, before I used to do the training as well, and I used to, have to spend half a day with someone just to do kind of the basic part of it. And at that point, you kind of had to hope that they weren't going to go off on some weird tangent. And it's important to say, obviously, we've brought in a new workflow, but we've also brought in WordPress. We brought in another tool for planning, which again is in my mind anyway, a very important part of transforming your newsroom is getting your planning right. It can be difficult to get journalists to want to plan, but you should do it. And the tool for that is called Cordium, but it syncs in with WordPress. And that's, again, a powerful thing about WordPress is it has all of these kind of very strong syncing. So you can do a lot of things with it that you maybe couldn't do elsewhere. And as I said, if you don't need a WordPress trainer, that's probably quite a good sign that it's kind of easy to onboard people.
And Tim, while we're talking about new approaches, I believe that there's been some AI developments within the Times. Would love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, of course. There have been. So essentially, we kind of had to think, what do we, with AI and specifically generative AI coming into play, like we had to think, what do we want to do and what is useful for us? Because of course you could just take AI and put it in anything just for the sake of it. But we wanted to see what's actually going to be valuable, what might save people time, effort, what might help them. The key phrase is AI to help us do our jobs is the key thing. Think of it a little bit like something that's kind of giving you rocket boots rather than something that's there to try and kind of march of the machines, take your role, because really that's what AI can do, and that's what we're doing. So what have we thought? Well, a key principle is going to be that we have to make sure that we're honest and that humans are in the loop and humans are the final say and humans are checking everything. So in terms of AI, really it's using generative AI to do tasks that might help us, such as for example, give you a first stab at a headline, but then a human will check that headline, rewrite that headline if they need to. And that's the important thing, to make sure that humans are always the person who is checking it. So it's kind of, in a way, using AI in a bit of the way that you might use a computer rather than a typewriter to make it much faster and easier to do your job. And I think that's the key watchword for every time you try and implement AI, because otherwise you probably will end up building sort of weird random tools that no one's going to use.
Absolutely. I think that's exactly how WordPress VIP is approaching AI as well. It's all about reducing toil and helping a human being and not replacing them. So as we start to kind of wrap up and move towards the end of the webinar, we wanted to touch upon what actions you can take to prepare for 2025. Really want everyone on this webinar to go away feeling inspired and, having some maybe action items for their planning. So we know that transforming a newsroom doesn't have to happen all at once, but a clear plan and the right partnerships can make a huge difference. So Lisa, you've worked really closely with newsrooms like The Times to tackle big challenges head on. So what are your practical tips to think about as we head into 2025?
Yeah, I think big one is auditing current workflows, just identify where those bottlenecks are. I think it's easy to kind of just go with the flow and like allow things to just kind of escalate into like inefficiencies essentially, and then you kind of trapped there in a sense, like similar to what the Times were with Method. It was kind of got to that point where like, where do we go now? We have to change CMS. So yeah, definitely audit the workflows and kind of like within that, I would say like figure out how long it takes to get the article from I guess from story planning, like Tim said, right through to publish. Use that as a benchmark and then see what steps you can do to improve on that. If it is a case of like switching CMSs to something like WordPress, seek a partner, an expert in the industry to help with that. So what we did at Big Bite was we went and kind of sat, it sounds really silly, but we kind of sat next to a few editors and just watched what they did, observing their day-to-day tasks. And that just allowed us to I guess like figure out where those improvements could be made, but also it was about learning from them as well and kind of seeing it through their eyes and taking that and basically saying like, well, we can do this in WordPress, but it'll also bring over like everything that you're currently used to, so you're not kind of switching from one thing to something totally different. And then another thing as well is just on that note, like onboarding and training, see how long it takes to onboard and train people to your current systems. And then like the Times, like the difference is massive. It saves a lot of overhead there. And like Tim said, he's the new WordPress trainer, but you might not even need to have that like additional overhead to train people on the systems going forward as well. I think they're the biggest tips for 2025.
Thanks, Lisa. And I know, Tim, from your perspective at the Times, we would love to hear what advice you would give to other newsrooms that are maybe just at the start of the transformation journey. They might be midway through, but are there any specific steps or lessons that you've learned that could help the teams on this webinar today?
Yeah, sure. So I think step one, before you do anything else, is to map out what you want your ideal workflow to look like. You can use any whiteboarding tool. I'm not going to name them. There are so many of them. You could write it on a physical whiteboard if you want. But map out what you want your workflow to be, what you think will be a good workflow. And then what you need to do really is you need to set up some kind of working group. And what you really need to do, this is getting very boring and very practical, but what you need to then do is you need to really take all the people who are kind of key, get them in a room, and trust me, that's going to be hard because journalists are busy doing day to day. But drag them by hook or by crook into a room, and basically ask them what their problems are that they want to solve and what their kind of I think the term is pain points are, and get them to help you map that out, and then you can refine your workflow, kind of incorporating in those pain points, and then you can see what solutions technically will help you to get into that workflow. So that's kind of the start. I think it starts at what do you want the ideal way that people should be working, and then what tools do you need to make sure that they can work in that way. I think the next key thing is ensuring that they're there every step of the way, and identifying two things, because there's always going to be two things with any project like this. There are your champions and there are your blockers. So identify your champions and keep them close, identify your blockers and keep them closer, and make sure that they are part of that journey, because there will be with any change, people that don't want to do it. And I think the best way to really in sort of enforce that is to get other people to enforce it, to make sure that that they are part of this and they are a stakeholder in it, and they feel like, but bringing in WordPress is my thing. So, you know, they want to fix it. And then I think then the practical side comes in, which is being honest and open with people. I always say, every time we're bringing in something new, I always say, look, it's not going to be perfect first time. There's going to be some glitch. There's going to be some meltdown. There's going to be something, you know, because if anyone comes in and tells you that they're going to build some software for you that will have no problems, then I suspect that you know that they're maybe telling a couple of fibs, because there's going to be a problem. There'll be a bug. But if you're upfront and honest about that with people, and they're part of it, they're part of solving those bugs and finding those bugs and helping you, then it really helps. And then when it comes to the implementation, I'd always say, think about your rollout, plan out your rollout. So plan out, okay, what's going to go first? So try and figure out which team are kind of a small team that really know what they're doing, know their roles, know their workflow really well, and try with them first, and then sort of move throughout your organization, because that first team will really inform other bits, and they will help you kind of flush out these problems and be humble and be ready for the fact that there'll be things you haven't thought about. There'll be things you have thought about and discarded. There'll be things you haven't thought about at all. And all of that is really valuable. And you can only really kind of get that when you start scaling it up a bit. And when you start scaling it up a bit, you'll get, there's this button doesn't work, or actually, I think this button being red clashes with this thing that's green, or whatever it might be, things that you maybe didn't realize. So I think it's important to take the practical steps and really map out how you're going to get there from start to finish. And also, it's important really to kind of try and make sure that your champions are there on the days you're doing the crucial things. So sometimes you have to say, well, if this key person's on holiday, maybe we just wait until after they come back. And I know that kind of sometimes seems annoying, that it can all hinge on one person, but there are times when, trust me, that really will save you and will make it much smoother transition.
Thank you both for the great tips. And a couple of really practical actions is, you're already here on this webinar, you'll receive a recording after the fact. You can share that with your colleagues so they can review this content. And the most important thing is exploring the Newsrooms 2.0 guide for some of those insights, which we have added a lovely QR code here for you to download. So it's a resource, again, that we created with Big Byte to help you navigate those challenges and opportunities in digital publishing. So there's lots of insights, some real world examples, and just informative strategies to transform your workflows for 2025. So I'll leave this on screen for a second so everyone can scan the QR code, download your copy and start exploring it. If for any reason you haven't got your mobile, or you are unable to scan, just let us know and we can send this across to you. So I'll give everyone a second to do that, and then we're going to move across to Q&A and start exploring some questions. So anybody that's got any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I know a couple of our customers have sent some in advance, so we're going to cover those, and I'll keep an eye on the chat as well. This is as much for you as it is for everybody else, so we really want this to be interactive. We want you to get what you need from this webinar, so feel free to jump in and ask as many questions. So first one is for Lisa. Lisa, what other trends are you seeing in digital publishing workflows that other newsrooms might consider adopting to stay competitive?
Yeah, I think I know we touched on AI. I think that just the use of that is it's everywhere now, isn't it? We see it in everything. I think just kind of getting familiar with it and understanding how, like Tim says, it can help rather than take over the actual work. I think another one is that cross collaboration piece as well, just ensuring that that's feasible in whatever CMS that you're using, or if you are thinking of moving over to WordPress, just ensuring that is part of the workflow, because it honestly makes a massive difference to not only time to create and publish articles, but just also the ease of use in the editor as well. But yeah, I think they're the two main ones that stand out for me.
And Lisa, can you share any innovative or experimental solutions that you might be developing for other newsroom customers, and how you see them impacting publishing as a whole?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the team here at Big Bite, we've been working on a package solution. So it's just aiming to simplify those the workflows in the newsroom, similar to what we've done on the Times. It's all kind of been inspired from our work over the years with different publications. And like I say, just kind of packaging that up to allow people a lower barrier of entry, really, like get into WordPress easier, have like 80% of it there, and then kind of build on it from there. It's to kind of try and save the time to move over to WordPress, but also the cost as well. But yeah, we've been working on something internally, which I'm sure we'll share something around and hear more about.
Awesome. And Lisa, in the Q&A, Stephen's asking, is there any opportunity to see the enhancements that you mentioned? So article, video, etc., the revisions and images in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in that Newsrooms 2.0 guide, we've touched on a lot of them already in there. But I'm sure that we can send around any videos and like the method versus WordPress video that we've seen today. I'm sure that could be shared around if anybody wanted to see more detail on that.
Thank you. And we have a question from Thomas. Thomas is asking this as an agency. And Thomas is asking, it's been really interesting hearing about custom plugins built between News Corp and Big Bite, but where and how do other publishers find agencies to work with on these kinds of bespoke workflow tools? There's so much in the WordPress and VIP plugins directory that might fit 80%, but when it comes to custom tools, where do you look?
I mean, I could be biased here and just say come to Big Bite, but I guess there's on the WordPress VIP site, there is some gold partners on there, which I do think kind of have expertise in different areas. I mean, like I mentioned, the solution that we've been working on, it's basically what you've just asked there, Thomas. It's to get that 80% of the way there. Yes, there's always going to be custom stuff to kind of add into that, but that's kind of why we've done it, because we know that it's a common thing that crops up with like pretty much every publication that we speak to. So that's where that's come from, really. So like I say, don't want to be too biased, but like just kind of do research on the expertise in the area, and that's all I'll say.
I can speak a little to that from the WordPress VIP side. So what we normally recommend to customers who are kind of asking us that question is we obviously have a panel of amazing partners that we have an awesome partnership team who actually organized this webinar, and they know all of our agencies really intimately, and they are the best team to kind of figure out and match you to an agency. So we spend time getting to know like what your ambitions are, what kind of things you need help with, and then we would recommend like a panel of 3 agencies to help out with that. And Stephen, I see that Sarah's just dropped a link in the chat. Anybody that wants to take a look at the video of Method versus WordPress on the Big Bite site, there's a link there. And I see more questions dropping in, but Tim, we have a question that dropped in for you. As you are continuing to innovate, what's next for the Times? We're interested in your kind of digital transformation journey, and are there any specific goals or challenges that you're focusing on for the future?
Yeah, I think really what we want to do is we want to focus on mobile storytelling. I think that's where we see the next evolution for us in some ways. We want to make sure that our articles are kind of telling stories on a horizontal screen, which most people are looking at. And I think, again, it's really using the fact that we know where people are looking. We know they're looking at mobile phones rather than looking at desktop computers. And I think that can be a bit of a challenge sometimes because everyone in their daily jobs working is sitting on a desktop computer. But your readers, when they're commuting, are not commuting on a desktop computer for the most part. They're looking at your app or your mobile web version. So I think really we want to try and optimize that, and we want to continue our WordPress journey with how many great components can we have from the vast components library. How can we make them do what we want them to do? How can we streamline our workflows more and reduce that time to publish even more? And how can we make it more integrated with our planning tools? How can we make it more integrated with a print CMS? How can we move forward like that in such a way that we've now gotten to a nice sort of stable level? How can we then move to the next level? And I think that next level is everything being much more integrated, everything being faster, everything being sleeker, reduction in kind of people doing the same task twice or three times. So these are key areas, and the output that you see from all of that should hopefully be that when you open your phone on 6, 7 a.m. on a train, then you see our app looking great, and even if you have bad train Wi-Fi, you can still load it up because hopefully performance will be great as well. So we're kind of working on all these different parts, and there's watch this space. There's quite a lot to come, actually.
We're excited to see what's to come. We have a question that's dropped in from Jeffrey, and Lisa, I think you're going to cover this one. Jeffrey wants to know, who are the folks that sit with the reporters and editors to see the workflows? Are they product managers, and how would those requirements find their way to engineers? Jeffrey's curious to see how other publishing companies handle that process.
Yeah, so we, I think there was about 4 or 5 of us that went down to the Times in London. So there was a mixture of myself from like project management side, and a couple of engineers actually came down with us as well. And then I think we had our head of design and UX, Johnny, as well with us. So we all basically just like kind of observe, because as you can imagine, we all have like different, like, I guess, ideas in our heads of how that would translate into WordPress. It was good to kind of take a mix of people down. And then what we'd usually do, I think we did that 2 or 3 times, and then we'd have like that working group that Tim mentioned earlier, that we'd sync up on that afterwards, and kind of everybody had taken their own notes, and then that's kind of where the workflows were refined. Everybody had their own kind of say, which was good because like everyone had a voice. So if you think of somebody like an editor would want something to work a certain way, the engineers might think, oh, well, actually, it'll be better if it works like X, Y, Z. So it was kind of nice to see those views pieced together and ultimately build what the Times have in production today. Doesn't necessarily have to be that way if it was like some people on the call who were looking to do a similar thing. I think even having like, I guess, somebody who knows WordPress quite well, even from a PM side rather than an engineer, somebody who can just translate that view and mindset into an engineer's eyes, I think is key there. Hopefully that answers your question.
And I can jump in here as well, which is that from my side, I kind of came from editorial. I started off as a sub editor for our news, and then I kind of transitioned into being our workflow editor, and now assistant head digital. But my 2 things are kind of tools and workflows. So in a way, I'm kind of that link between the product team and the sort of day-to-day, as you could maybe call it, newsroom. So often I'll be there to be that kind of person who will take all of the different requests and requirements and kind of synthesize it and make that decision as to, when do we compromise engineering wise and when do we compromise editorially, because ultimately at some point you probably will have to, but also ultimately, you might have 10 different people with from different departments, a designer, a video, SEO, a sub editor, whatever it might be, and they each have their specific thing that they want. But you essentially have to, someone somewhere needs to stack that up and decide what are the important ones, what are the less important ones, and how do we put that in a row of things to do. And that's what my current role is all about doing, really, is being that link between those 2. So hopefully that sort of answers Jeffrey, which is that, yeah, you have that person who is from editorial, who talks, I talk to the engineers all the time, but also talks to the product managers. And with the working group, we had it so that engineers could be were on the calls, as were people, in the newsroom were on the calls. And it meant that you could get someone saying, no, the reason we want it like this is because you do this. And then the engineers go, oh, okay, maybe it could work like this, or, well, have you thought about doing this? Would that work? And then obviously we can say, maybe we can train that into people, or whatever, whatever it is. So I think it's important to have a link between the newsroom and the engineers, but also it's important to bring those people into those conversations directly in the newsroom when you can grab them, and make sure that they feel part of the discussion, and that they know that you haven't, designed something in such a way to be unhelpful to them or to be helpful to them. You're all trying to achieve the same goal, which is a great CMS and a great article ultimately.
Thanks, Tim, and thank you for the great question, Jeffrey. Tim, if you look back on the transformation journey at the Times, was there anything that surprised you most about the process or the results, and any kind of unexpected benefits or lessons learned that you can share some tidbits with our webinar attendees?
It's a good question. I think what really surprised me, to be honest, was actually how, when it started coming to the point of rolling it out, you almost when you start, you really want to just get it out there. It sort of surprised me how much people were actually saying, it was more, well, can we start using that now? Rather than being, oh, this thing's coming for us. So I think that's the thing that surprised me. I think part of that is, again, that once you start showing them them how it works, and they'll say, oh, this looks way easier. But then the other thing, there's two other things that surprised me, and one was how the logistical challenge of organizing training, which I expected to be quite difficult, was in fact extremely difficult, especially in a 24/7 newsroom where some people work night shifts, some work day shifts. So and how much you have to chase people up as well is kind of always surprising. I'm trying to help you, I'm trying to show you how to use something, but you have to chase. So be prepared for that. I think that was a big, to be fair, that was a bit of a surprise how much you had to do that. And I think that's the key ones that I'm able to remember off the top of my head. They're quite practical, I'm afraid.
We love practical advice. Well, we're almost coming to the end of the webinar, so I just want to give everyone a final chance to drop a question. If you have a burning question, please do drop it in the chat. I have one final question, and then I think we can give everyone a couple of minutes before they all run to the next meeting. But my last question, Lisa, is for you. What are some of the common challenges that you encounter when you're implementing custom tools for newsrooms, and how do you overcome them?
Yeah, I think we've touched on this a little bit, but just people's mindsets, I think, is the hardest challenge. I think kind of catering to keeping something similar enough so they're not like scared by the change. I think that's like just a huge challenge we face with News Corp, with other publications as well. But like I say, we do try and keep workflows as unchanged as possible. Just by working closely with them, I think sitting down and watching them, it just helps kind of understand why they're doing things in a certain way. Like, I think if we hadn't done that and they came to us and said, we want this end to end to work like this, we'd probably be like, why? But then sitting down with them and seeing why they actually do it, like, makes a lot more sense. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for me. I don't know if Tim, you probably agree with that. I think that's a huge one to try and overcome and keep everyone happy at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, it's mindset, and also it's kind of making sure that when you are moving, that you are careful about the noise, because there will be a lot of noise, and you need to kind of filter that out and figure out what are the actual actionable points that people are making. And what I mean by that is, when I go back to any bugs or anything you might encounter, you need to figure out, well, what is actually a bug and what is just someone's doing something in a different way and they're not used to that yet and they don't like it. So I think you need to kind of tailor two things, and it's a real toss up between, on the one hand, it really does get people on side and really does help if someone gives some feedback and then they see that feedback being actioned and they see that something has changed because of that feedback. That's huge. But then also not just leaping on every single bit of feedback, because it's overwhelming. You won't be able to do everything and you won't be able to please every single person. So kind of being able to filter that and figure out what are the best ones for you and for your newsroom and for your kind of newsroom's goals, but also for the majority of your users, which hopefully makes sense. And also keeping the team sort of morale up and making sure that the team who are implementing this know that you're all pulling together and you don't kind of make it look as if you're arguing or anything like that. Which kind of sounds a little bit like, you don't want to see dad and dad, mum and dad, mum and mum arguing together. And I think you need to make sure that that you kind of control that noise as well.
Thanks, Tim. Just want to thank both Lisa and Tim for sharing your insights and expertise with us today. Big thank you for everyone that joined us and being part of the conversation and the great questions that have been asked. So if you'd like to revisit any part of the session or share it with your colleagues, webinar will be available on demand soon. You'll receive the details by email. We really look forward to seeing you at future events. And just before we drop, I will bring the QR code back up for anybody that missed it. If you want to have a download of the Newsrooms 2.0 guide. But thank you all for joining us. Bye, everyone.
Hey, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.